Hi everyone, welcome to Tom's Manshed. Now I recently did a video about 3D printing and different objects, and I split it into two parts. One for ornamental objects like figurines and one for useful objects like tool storage cases and things like that. And in them videos, or in one of them anyway, I skimmed slightly over what supports are. But I thought I'd go a bit more in depth into what supports are and what they do when you're and why you need them when you're printing certain models in this video, hence me making this one. So like I said, I'm going to go a bit more in depth. I'm not going to go totally in depth because to set them all up there's various different softwares, and I only use one called Simplify 3D. The most popular one seems to be one called Cura, which is totally free. It's just that I started on this Simplify 3D many years ago with my first printer, and I'm used to it, so that's what I've stuck to. Now, what a support is when you're printing in 3D is just as it describes. It supports a part of the print. And I'll show you what I mean on these. Well, first of all, I'll show you this one. This is a completed one I did of Captain America. Now, as you know, the way a 3D printer prints, it prints in slices. So it starts at the bottom and it squirts out a 0.2mm or a 0.1mm thick layer of filament plastic, and it goes up slowly, very slowly and surely doing this. But obviously it's got to have something to print on, so when it starts on the base, it's starting there on the actual build platform, and then it builds up on there. Now you can do an angle, you can print test pieces that will show you what angle your printer is capable of, and mine will print at about a 45-degree angle, so it would put sort of like bits there building up to a 45-degree slope without any supports. But if it's flatter than that at horizontal, or anything less than 45 degrees, it will need a support, or it's just trying to print in mid-air. So as you can see on this, there's no problem until we get up to the bottom of the shield. Now the bottom of the shield is just in mid-air. So as your print head comes along to here, it's printed the legs, which have been building up slowly but surely from the bottom, and then it moves over to here when it gets to this, and it starts printing here. Now as it squirts its filament out, if there's nothing to support this here, it's just going to do it in midair, and it's just going to be a string of filament that falls to the floor, and nothing is going to happen here. So the legs and everything will print perfectly, but as soon as it gets to here, and then shortly after to here, the tips of the fingers, there's nothing for it to print on top of. So what you have to do is put supports in, which is like a column structure, which breaks off after and you just throw it away. But it starts from the base and builds, or it can start from another part of the body. I'll show you that in the software in a bit. And then when it gets to this, it's got like a column that it can start printing the hand on. And then from there on up, it wouldn't need any more supports. Now, some models are brilliantly designed. So when they designed this, if they'd have done that shield tucked in at an angle so that it was actually touching his leg here, it wouldn't have needed supports, because it had just gone over there and started building the shield up from there, and it's already got his leg as a support. It's because it's in mid-air and it's surrounded basically by nothing that it needs that support. But like I say, if they'd have tilted that in so it was an angle touching his leg, it wouldn't have needed it. And you can see that more clearly on this Batman figure. Now this printed with absolutely no supports whatsoever. And you can see, again, I'll show you this in detail on the software and show you what I mean. As it's printing from thing, it's printing a vertical leg there and a vertical leg there. This angle here of his leg going up is above 45 degrees, so that's fine. when it gets to here, his arm here, this one, is attached to his cape. There's no gap, so it's part of the cape. So again, no support needed. We've already got the cape up to there. And then when we get to this arm here, as you can see, it's moving in an angled thing. So again, it's just about above 45 degrees, so it's fine. If that arm would have been sticking straight out like this, we'd have needed support. So that has been really, really well designed for the 3D printer and needed, like I said, no supports whatsoever. As did this skull. Again, if you look, there is no part on it. It starts printing the base and comes to the teeth. They're all vertical. This piece here is almost vertical. These side pieces, everything, there's no horizontal in mid-air bits. Even when it gets to sort of here, it's at quite, I hold that level, it's at quite a steep angle going up, so it didn't need any supports. And everything inside that was totally support free. But here's two I've just done: a Hulk and an Antman. And I've said no. After this, I'm printing no more Marvel and DC comic figurines. Both shelves will now be full, and I'm not doing any more. I'm replacing a little Hulk, I'll show you that soon, that looks out of place because everything else is taller than the small Hulk I played. So I've just printed a bigger Hulk, and you can see on here what I mean. Now, because his arm is coming out, if you can see that there, because his arm is horizontal almost in mid-air there, if we didn't have them supports underneath, which start from his leg here to hold it up here, to give the filament as it comes out something to be on, it would have just been in mid-air. And again, the same for this arm here. You can see it's quite a long horizontal run of his fingers. That finger, the very end of that finger there, you can see that support is supporting. If it didn't have that there, it would have just started squirting in mid-air and then just fallen down. That finger would not have formed. Under his chin there, I may have got away with that without doing a support there, but I thought I'd put one in just to be sure. Because it is a bit of a horizontal outlet, it would have got to there and I got loads off, and that'll snap off dead easy. Now, you may be wondering what all this hot glue gun is around. If you do your supports too thin, like I did on this, as they get to this sort of height, they can be quite delicate. I did do an increased skirt on these with them attached to it to give it a bigger footprint on the bed. But because they're quite a slender, weak sort of thing, particularly because I did them a bit thin, I should have done these thicker. I'll show you that on the next model. When it got to here, I could see, I was here at the time it was printed, and I could see this was moving around this. You can see how sort of like flexible it is. So what I did, I just pressed pause on the print. My printer, the Creality CR6, it's got the facility where you can pause a print. You just press pause. It moves the build platform forward, raises the print head, keeps the heat on the bed so the object doesn't come unstuck, and it lets you do anything like change the filament or whatever that you've paused it for. So that gave me the ability to squirt some hot glue here just to increase these things. If you feel it's not stuck perfectly there to the base, you could put a bit of blue tack. I've sometimes been known to shove some blue tack around there just to hold it firmer to the base, and that stiffened up these bits really well. You can see I put a bit there as well. They were really thin and wobbling around. This bit was really, you can see now how easily that will break off, which is the idea. It's supposed to break off, but they can start collapsing halfway up, and then of course you've no support. and you've got to keep your fingers crossed it prints okay, or start the print again. What I should have done, and again I'll explain it shortly, it'll become more clear in the software, is do the supports bigger. Now here's one I've just done of Antman. You can see the detail on there is really, really nice. So that's a great print. You can see on his head how detailed that, and you can see hardly any layer lines. That's done in 0.2 of a millimeter layer lines. The top of the Hulk's head here I did change to 0.1 of a millimeter, and you can see how fine that looks. But getting back to Antman, you can see I printed this upside down. Again, I'll show you in a minute why I printed it upside down, because there's less supports needed upside down, because it's starting here and this part of his arm is going in an upward direction, so I didn't need any support under there. And when it's delicate like the fingers, it can make a bit of a mess when the support sticks to it. I still needed it under here, this bit of the arm, and this horizontal part of the leg here. But if I'd have printed it that way round, there'd have been even more supports needed. There'd have been one under that foot there, there'd have been one under this arm here, there'd have still been ones required under here. So it was even better. But I even used on this a raft. But you can see on this one I picked a much wider support. I'll show you how you alter the measurements for that. And these supports are much more solid. Solid enough to sustain themselves as they print up, but still where they contact the object you've printed, it's still only just sticking, which is good, because you do want them to break off. So we'll go into the software now and I'll explain that. It'll be a bit more apparent in the software, I think, and then I'll just show you how these break off, and then we're going to paint this. I'll take a few days to make this video. I'll get these painted in primer and then I'll show you the finished articles. But let's go now into the software now and have a look at how you do these supports in there. Okay, so we've got the Hulk here, which you've just seen that I've just printed. And if we tried to print this with no supports, we'll click down here, bottom left, prepare to print. Like I said, this will vary in the different softwares. I only know this, which is Simplify 3D. I'm not sure on Cura. I did use it once, but I managed to get hold of this many years ago, so I've just stuck with Simplify 3D. But if you use Cura, there'll be similar things in there. But this is just, like I say, a basic instruction on what supports are and why you need them. So if we change to that view now, this will show you how it prints. And if we start from the bottom, so the very, very first layer is there, its feet, straight onto the print bed. Obviously, we've got something to support the first layer, which is the print bed itself. And then as it builds up, got the infill a bit dense there. It doesn't need to be that dense, but that's irrelevant to this video. And as you see, so far we're fine. There's nothing printing in mid-air. There's always something for it to print on. They join there, the two legs, and they carry on up. But just there, on the right here, as you can see, when it starts printing its fingers there, it's going to start in mid-air. And there is nothing to support this. So your print head will move across to here and start extruding filament in mid-air. There's absolutely nothing to stop it falling. It's not going to stay hovering like on this picture in mid-air. It's just going to squirt right down to the bottom, and you're just going to end up with an awful gloopy mess of spaghetti strung all over the place. And again, as we get to his other hand here, it needs something to support it. Once we're past there, we're pretty much alright. Everything has got a thing. There's a tiny bit, if we look at his chin, zoom in a bit there. As we get to his chin, it's starting to print in midair there, but you might sort of get away with that because as soon as it's there, it's printing like a full line. So you might only miss the bottom bit of his chin. But you might as well put a little support there as well. So what we need to do is add supports. So we exit the preview view, and again on here on Simplify 3D, it's this here. Now you can pick the maximum overhang angle. So I've picked 45. So anything more than 45, it would generate an automatic support for. The trouble is with this generate automatic supports, first of all, I'll put this pillar resolution down to 3. That's what I used for them supports, which ended up a bit too thin and a bit too flimsy that I've showed you. If I click automatic support, you can see it puts absolutely tons. Little ones here for the belt. There's no need for that. So it's not a good idea putting automatic supports. That never seems to work very well. So I've just cleared them supports and we can add them manually. So what you do, click add new support structure and you go under here like this, clicking where you think it might need a support. So you put one there and there and so on. But as you can see, these supports are very thin. I probably picked a slightly bigger one when I did it, but they are way too thin. So again, we'll clear them, but this time I'll pick a much higher print resolution, say even 9 there. And this time, when we click, you can see they're much bigger. So that's not going to collapse as easy as the other ones. And if we go around clicking like that, this support here can be a short one just from the top of his leg. As we move around there, you can see that's going to need one there. And you just go around where you think it's going to need it. The more supports you put in, obviously the better it's going to be supported, but the longer it's going to take to print and the more filament will be used. I'm not bothered about the amount of filament. It's mainly the time and how strong these things are. So as you can see there, if we now go into, in fact we'll put some under this other one as well. Once we get to that, you can see that angle is quite steep, so we probably won't even need a support there, but we would here. Maybe one each side. There, that's going to give his chin something to support. Now if we go back down into that prepare to print, we can now see these supports in there. So and if we go back, let's see if we've got them in the right place. So come up again, as you can see this time it's building supports with it. And I've also put a skirt round here that sticks out 10 layers that's attached to the support, so that gives it a bit more anchorage and a bigger footprint to support the supports. And now when we get to printing his hand, you can see there is something for it to start printing on. And there's not one there, so we missed out on that. We're going to soon go back and rectify that. But as it moves up, there is something there. Again, I was a bit out in my placement there. Could do with one just there. and there's nothing to support there, so there we're going to need more supports there. So you just click out of there, so you'd go back into it, click the resolution up to 10 again, say add new support structures, and then fit one in there, and where was the other place? So wherever you need it. So you just keep going around there. If you see any that aren't needed, look, there's one there that somehow ended up there. You can just click on that and click remove that one. So you just go around checking by clicking prepare to print and then dragging them sliders down, seeing where it's going to print, and checking that there's no mid-air bits. And then you've got all your other things to check. You can see I'm on 20% fill. I would probably go down to 10% on that. There's no need for a really dense fill. You don't need any strength for a figurine. It's just going to sit on a shelf. So 10 would be ideal. Yeah, I won't go into any of them other settings in there. That's for another video. This is just about supports. So that's the Hulk done. That's what I should have done, made them supports a bit bigger, and then they wouldn't have collapsed as easy. So if we go into, oh, also when I downloaded that Hulk, also in the file was this one with supports as part of the print. They're already done now. I don't know what program they've been created in, Cura or whatever, but I did try a similar one a few years ago with these supports, and they just look too delicate to me. I can see this sort of like collapsing as it's going up. I mean that's at 45-ish degrees, so yeah, you get away, but it'd be a very, very thin support here, and whether it didn't seem to work at all on the other end. There seems a lot of tiny spindly support, so I don't think, and these here under this under his bicep here and that, there's just no need for that. I didn't need any supports around here, so yeah, I didn't like that, so that's why I added my own supports. Now on the Antman one, that's the way the file actually appears when you click it. It appears upside down as it is, and that is actually the best orientation to do it, because, except for the same reason, we would need a support here. As we go along, it's going to be starting to print that, so you're going to need a support there, but it's only quite a short one to get down to the base, and maybe one here and here, and then we're okay till we get to here. We might get away with that. If it's 45 degrees, you could tip over this a bit more to make that more vertical, so you might want to put some supports there. I put some supports there, and I think I did put one big one there just to sort of like hold it, not to support it while the filament comes out to stop it printing in midair, but just because it's leaning over to support it. And I also did this one on a raft, as you saw when I held it up to the camera. Again, that's for another video what a raft is, but it's basically increases the surface area, and for something that's not much touching the bed like that, you can put little tiny supports in here and print it on a raft, and it tends to stick a bit better. If I'd have changed the rotation, so we'll turn it round now 180 degrees. I'll just skip to that. So we flipped it 180 now, and if we were to print it in that orientation, which logically looks the best one to it, it would end up needing more supports, because it's only just touching there on that little point. We could get it more vertical. In fact, we'll do that. So, could do that. So we've got it more vertical now, but we're going to need a support here under this leg here. We may get away with that, but we'll probably need one under here. And this arm here will need an extremely sort of long one under it. the chin wheel there, and these little pipes and that. So it'd end up needing more supports that if we click prepare to print. Now if we see how many places it's going to try to print in mid-air. So that's his other leg, so we're going to need one under there, one under there. Like I say, quite a tall one that to reach down to the ground. One under here. And then these little filament things here. Again, you might get away without supports for that. But yeah, it's like a compromise. You've got to orientate it for the least supports and the best contact with the base. You could also try lying on its back, see how many things need them. So a bit of time spent working out where the supports will be needed makes all the difference. But sometimes you come across a fantastic model like the Batman one I showed you now. As I mentioned earlier on in the video when I was showing you the Batman one, that needed no supports whatsoever. Here it is. That's the Batman 101. Really, really well designed for the 3D printer. And because of the way the designer has done this, like I say, you just don't need any supports. If we go into prepare to print now, and if we look now, send it right down to the bottom, starting from thing, all these are the bits touching the bed. So we're starting off with his feet here at the front, and these are parts of his cape at the back. And then as we make our way up, again, nothing in mid-air. If you notice, the legs are about to join now. That spike there is quite a steep angle, so that's fine. And as we go up, and you can see here, his arm, his left arm, is part of the cape. It's like stuck. It's all part of the same plastic as far as the printer's concerned. It started printing the fingers here, and there was nothing to print in mid-air. It's getting up here. Then when it starts moving forward, it's on a steep angle, still attached to the cape, and his other arm is raised up above his head. So again, nothing in mid-air to print. Going up right to the extremities of the cape and the points, and again, no really tiny points which are just going to break off. And his arm and his fist are up there, and if you look at the angles, they're all reasonably steep angles all the way. So that printed absolutely fantastic with no supports, which just saves loads and loads of time printing. Amount of filament, like I said, I'm not too bothered about the amount of filament. The price it is, it's cheap enough. But the main thing is the preparation after. You get a much smoother model. You have nothing to snap off, nothing to file and sand and stuff. So with a bit of thought, models can be designed. Obviously, you just don't want everything raising their arms up, but if it had been down here and, say, his hand had been touching his leg there, it wouldn't have needed a support because it was part of there when it gets to it, and you could sort of like move around in a curve like that. So hopefully that, I know it's long-winded as usual from me, but hopefully that explains what supports are and why we need them. So as you saw there, if you are doing a really tall support like here, you're best doing it as a wide one on there. Now I can't speak for other slicers like Cura and any other slicers out there. Slice, I think there's one called Slice 3D, I'm not sure. I know one of them, I think it's in Cura, has like a tree structure, which is great because you could just do one wide one like that and then sort of branch off with thinner ones further up which won't collapse. But you haven't got that option in Simplify 3D, not that I know of. You've just got these, the option of doing these. So from now on, I'm going to make these really, really wide if they are a long length. Obviously, doing a little one like that just to support the toe, yeah, you can get away with doing a thinner one there. But yeah, I've sort of learnt my lesson. I should have learnt it a lot earlier because I've had loads of these sort of things collapse and tried to glue together and do it that way. So yeah, you saw that. Let's get these broken off now. So that's it. I'm doing this live. I've not pre-broke them or anything like that. And you saw how easy that came off there. So that's that. This one here under the arm, it's just basically just falling off. This one here, I'm gonna be a bit careful on this because as you can see, there's this round thing here is part of the print. That's sort of like some like wire on his helmet or a oxygen tube or something like that. So I'm going to do this off camera and just remove this, being a bit more careful, maybe getting a knife under there. But when there's nothing delicate above it, you can just break them off. It says, again, I'm going to need pliers for that one. That one there should be able to get off. It's quite a thin column, as you see. That broke off quite easy. So we'll carry on getting them off with pliers. The ones on the Hulk here will come off really easy because they are the thin, delicate ones, and you can see as I just break these off, they come away quite easily. You might have to just sand a bit there, get a needle file and sand that bit off, but it's still a lot better than having sagging filament because there was no support there. Again, see how easy they break off. That one, you can see how wonky that way went when it was up. It just about supported, but again, breaking off dead easy. And not a lot of finishing off to do under there at all. You can see how the filament went with it not being fully supported. There's still some swirls, but that will soon file out. Like I say, it won't take much preparation at all, that file it out. Sometimes you get slight artifacts like I've noticed on this Antman. You can see here, where are we? Just along there is a gap between them, so I'm going to have to put some filler there just where the angle of his leg changes. That is like, for some reason, turned out hollow there, so I'll have to put a bit of filler in there, but again, that's nothing of a job really. See it a bit clearer on the other side. That's nothing, but again, the detail on that, and hardly any tidying up whatsoever is required for that. That will just pull off dead easy. And so we'll get all these off here. I'm going to file it up and I'll show you them just done with primer, and then we'll see them fully painted at the end. Okay, it's now the following day and I've snapped off all the supports off both those models. For doing that, like as I showed you, it breaks off easy enough with the hand, but if it's stuck a bit hard as particularly the thick ones. Just a pair of pliers, needle nose pliers like that, or wider ones. Cutters, the ones you get with your printer are handy, or them if it's a bit thicker. I also made that, I forgot to tell on my other video, which you'll see up here, about useful things to print on your 3D printer. I forgot to include this, and here is a very useful item, a sanding tool. So you just cut your sandpaper, lock it in there. I use that a lot on the models. And a stainless steel brush, that's handy for getting rid of the wispy hairy sort of stringing on it. And just a scalpel modelling knife. So like I say, all the supports are now off. And once you've got them off and sanded it and filled it, what I do is coat them with a couple of coats of primer. Now, I started using an aerosol primer ages ago, but it tends to eat through them when you're doing quite a few models and you give them a couple of coats of primer. It eats through the aerosols, and they're not cheap. So what I started using was this, and I found it even better actually. It's from Aldi, chalk paint, but any sort of stuff like this, an undercoat primer sort of type paint. It's very sort of chalky. It's chalk paint, if you like, very matte, very textured, and it's an ideal primer. And it's pretty thick and gloopy, too thick and gloopy in there because it would cover the details. Ideal for filling in bigger sort of like cracks and that, but it would cover the fine details. So what I've done is I've thinned it down into wearing off now, but you can probably see thick primer and thin primer. The thick one is the consistency of cream, I would say, and that's the consistency of milk. And what I've done with these two models, I've just given 2 coats of the thinner one. And here is the Hulk, and as you can see, he's looking pretty good. Now, you can get, it depends on how intensive you want to be. As you see under here, there's still quite a few sort of blemishes around these lumps and that, and down here on the feet. They'll flake off dead easy then. Soon get rid of them with a thing. This primer makes it easier to see them. They're not always apparent without this on. So I'm going to go around in a minute and just get rid of all them bigger ones. But any big gaps between the layers, sort of like the contours of the layers, you can fill them in as well if you like with filler. And as I mentioned before, I did the face in a higher resolution. That's just 0.1mm layer height. You can see it change layer at about here, there. So it's a bit more detailed for the face. But again, under the chin, I haven't gone too over the top, and under the arms, you can still see all them. So it depends on how keen you want to be. That's fine for me because it's going to be stood on a shelf away from me. I look up at them from my armchair behind, and that's fine for me. They're never going to win any competitions for detail and painting. I ain't the best painter in the world, as you probably noticed, and you'll see at the end of this video. But I am quite pleased with all the detail that this printer is leaving. If you look there on Ant-Man, on his chest, like the Captain America, you can see all that textured effect, and all stuff around his belt. Again, a couple of little artifacts. I'll cut them off with the scalpel blade before I do it. Some sort of like wispy hairs around his hand here. These bits on the side here, yeah, they are looking sort of like quite lumpy and very hard to cut because they're so delicate there. I can't put too much pressure on. I could do it with a hot blade. Either heat the scalpel blade up in a flame, or just use like a soldering iron smoothing. But again, it depends on how intensive you want to get. If you're really keen, you could spend hours and hours making this almost as good as a plastic construction kit in quality. But to me, that'll do, and I'll show you at the end, see what you think. of what Ant-Man there looks like fully painted. But so far with the ones I've done, I'm quite pleased and they look great on the shelf. Again, I'll show you that at the very, very end of this video. But I just thought I'd show you that and the primer that I use as like an undercoat. And as I said, if I used a thicker one, that would fill in this detail here, and I don't want that. So yeah, I'm quite pleased with that. This one, it's orientated there, as you can see, that if you hold that leg flat, I'm going to have to stick that on a base, and he's supposed to look like he's running, like one I did on the Flash, you'll see later. So I'm going to have to make some sort of base, circular base, to put that on. But again, you'll see that later. But that's the stage we're up to now. Primed and almost ready to paint, apart from just going around the odd little blemish. So let's get that painting done. I need some metallic red for this, which I've sent off for, but hasn't arrived yet. So I'm going to start on the Hulk, which is a lot easier. It's just basically green and purple for his trousers, and that's it. That'll take a lot more doing Ant-Man. But I'll go into some of the paints I've tried and that I recommend and don't recommend at the end. So we'll go away and paint them now, and the next thing you'll see in just a few seconds on this video will be the finished articles. Okay, so it's now 2 weeks later. I was hoping to be just about a week later painting them, but you may have noticed at the beginning of the rest of this video, my left eye here was sort of slightly swelling. I just thought it was like the onset of a sty or something like that, but it got really bad. It's on the mend now after a full course of antibiotics. It's still not brilliant, as you can see, so hope it's not putting you off too much. But I thought I'd better get this video finished. But yeah, it did end up really bad. If easily queasy and nauseated, look away now, but this is what it looked like a few days after my last filming. Yeah, not a pretty sight, is it? And it was cellulitis. So anyway, it's clearing up fine now, and I can actually see out of it again. So anyway, that's by the by. So here's the two things fully painted now. As you can see, there's a Hulk. Again, quite pleased how that. I'm not very good at faces on figurines, the eyes and things, but I don't think it looks too bad, that the teeth and the eyes. But other than that, easy thing to paint. I've sprayed it with believe it or not, that's a semi-gloss, a satin thing. It looks a lot more reflective on this because it's under the bright camera light, but in the daylight it doesn't look quite as shiny as that. But it'll probably look better with a totally matte coating, but it's okay. It's sat on a shelf in front of me. And the Ant-Man one, I'm really quite pleased how that turned out. I got some, again, this camera's not picking up the colours too brilliantly, but it's like a metallic red paint there. Quite tricky to paint, there's lots of silver lines on it, and I used a dry brushing technique to just sort of like give some silver highlights. Again, it's hard to see what it actually looks like because it's not as reflective as that to the naked eye, but you can just see the dry brushing I did for the on top of the black. But yeah, quite pleased how that turned out. And we'll take a look at them on the shelves in a minute. All the complete collection done, not printing anymore, on the shelves. And I'll show you the filament I used, the PLA filament I used. So let's have a look at that now. So here is the full collection. Top shelf, as you can see, are all DC characters, starting with Aquaman, Wonder Woman, Superman, The Flash, Batman and Robin, and the bottom shelf, Marvel characters, Iron Man, the Hulk, as you've just seen, Captain America. Hellboy isn't Marvel or DC Comics, it's Dark something or other. I'll put a caption on what he is, but he's not Marvel or DC, Spider-Man of course, and Ant-Man, again that I've just shown you, and Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy. So all them were printed on this, my CR6. I absolutely love this printer. There was a lot of bad talk about it when it first came out, but I haven't had any problems, haven't put a foot wrong since I've had it. Now that's the PLA I used to print them two characters. Overture, I've never used it before, but it was cheap. It was only 14 quid. There was a discount at the time. I'll put a link for that. That's from Amazon, and I think the quality was really nice. It's as good as anything else I've used. So I'll put a link to that in the description. And yeah, a bit more of the CR6 with a magnetic bed on that I reviewed in another video. Like I said, I absolutely love that printer, and it's that's the view I've got when I'm sat in my easy chair or watching the TV there. Some of the other stuff I've printed, and quite a collection of paints as well, including the racks that hold them bottles. That was printed. They were printed on the 3D printer as well. So yeah, that's the entire collection. Marvel and DC characters, and like I said, I'm not doing it anymore. Now, some of the paints I used, that's a whole nother video. I'm not going to do one of them because I'm not an expert painter. There's some videos on YouTube which are fantastic, the detail they get into the characters and that. Of course, they're usually using miniatures that have been bought, so they're much smoother than a 3D printed one. But as you saw, the 3D printed ones, they still look pretty good from a couple of feet away. But paint varies from a scale like 0 to 10 on how good it is. The best ones, some of the best ones I've tried are these. Vallejo or Vallejo or whatever. If you can get a set on Amazon, I'll put links to some of these paints below, some of the ones I recommend. They're really good. They're quite sort of thick, and as you squeeze it out, you can mix a bit of water with them to thin them down, but the pigment is really good in them. This one was the metallic red I sent off for. I've not tried this make. MIG ammo. And as you can hear, it's a lot runnier. The Vallejo ones are thicker. You can't hear that moving around at all. This, you can hear it, and they have a little ball bearing already in it. So much runnier, but again, fantastic pigment. You only need 1 or 2 maximum coats on that. If you can keep an eye open on Facebook Marketplace and places like that, and any local person selling, there's loads of people usually selling off their sort of like paint collection, giving up, doing art stuff and that. And I managed to get a sort of like a box of various stuff with this stuff in it, like folk art, and I think there was a couple of other makes for like a tenner, and it was a big box of unused things, and that was great value. And some other great value paints, which are pretty good, I think, are these from Aldi. Now, I bought this set of metallics from there a couple of months ago. I think there was about 10 in the box. Can't remember how much it was. And I've just got these a couple of weeks ago, a bit smaller. But there was 20, I think there was 20 of these in a tub for £4.99. And they're like an artist's acrylic. You squeeze it out like toothpaste. It's a bit runnier than toothpaste. But again, really good pigments in these. Much, much better than some others I'll show you in a minute. And yeah, good value. So if you see any cheap stuff at Lidl's or Aldi or anything like that, I'd advise buying it. The worst that can happen is that you might need a few more coats. And if it's really, really rubbish, you can always take it back for a refund. But yeah, keep an eye out for them. They're pretty good. And stuff like this, these acrylic pens are quite handy. It's liquid ink inside, and then you just push the nib down on the thing and you can draw reasonable lines, but it's still quite a fat end on that. And then the thing I used for the Hulk's teeth, just for doing the black lines, was one of these fine line, was it Creative fine liner? But again, I got this from Aldi, box of them for next to nothing. So always keep an eye out for things like that, because these are, like I said, they are great. But if you're buying them individually, it's like £3 for a bottle. You're best looking out for a box set on Amazon. They do discounts sometimes on a certain range of colours, and they could be better value, but still quite expensive. And then, yeah, you can get this. Absolute rubbish. This was a set I saw on Amazon, a set of, I forget what it was, 8 for £8, I think it was. Thought it was worth the risk. I've kept them. I didn't bother sending them back. But it's really thick, but the pigment is absolute rubbish. And yeah, absolute garbage. The thickness of a paint is nothing to do with how good it covers. You can go from something really, really thick like that you think, oh, great. Even if you put it on neat, it covers rubbish. It's going to take you quite a few coats to something like this, which I've just shown you, which is like a runny liquid, but will cover in 1 or 2 coats. So don't be fooled into thinking the thicker the paint, the better. It's not. It's the amount of pigment in the paint that's better, and you get what you pay for. But there is some good value. I say 20 of them for £4.99. It's pennies each one, and that's what I painted the Hulk with. This colour and the purple as well, and didn't need many coats, 2 or 3 coats, and it was good. So yeah, so hopefully it has helped you. The earlier bit about the supports, on getting to grips with supports and what they do and what you might need to do when printing an object like this. These are always going to be the hardest type of thing to print on a 3D printer, support wise. Apart from that Batman one and very rare ones like that don't need supports that I showed you earlier on, you're always going to need something to support these arms and legs and chin and that. They've got all sorts of overhanging bits. A lot of items that you print on your 3D printer are low and flat, like the bottle openers and can openers, the boxes for tools, the lithophane lamp frames. None of them need supports because they're all square, and all the models like Pokemons and the cute cuddly toys and that, they tend to have like curved edges and that. They don't need supports, but these figurines type things do. So if you can get to grips with support on these and have a successful print, then you should be able to do it for near enough anything. So I know, as usual, I've babbled on, and a video just about a tutorial on supports has ended up going into paints and showing you my models and things like that. But I hope you don't mind me just showing you the finished result. And this sort of thing, a figurine is going to be the hardest type of thing to print, or one of the hardest on a 3D printer due to it needing supports. Most stuff you'll find like Pokemon type shaped things and curved cuddly animals and boxes and bottle openers and that won't need supports. So if you want to practice with supports, try a figurine with loads of horizontal bits, and if you can come to grips with that and conquer supports for that, you should be set for using them on anything. So hope it's been of some use and has encouraged you to try 3D printing. You can see what the end result is. I think they look great, these models, particularly from just a couple of foot away. And like I said, I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. If you have and you'd like to subscribe, please click the little picture of the shed here. Give me a thumbs up if you can as well. That'd be much appreciated. And I'll catch you for the next one as soon as possible. See you for that one. Bye for now.